Great! Let's begin Episode 10 of Whispers of the Ancients. East Asia, Episode 10, the Tang Dynasty, Poets, Emperors, and Golden Days. 1. The brushstroke before dawn. Before the brush touched silk, before Li Bai composed his drunken verses, before Chang'an's lanterns shimmered like constellations upon earth, there was a storm. In the shadows of a fractured land, after the collapse of the Sui, chaos reigned. Warlords split the heart of the Middle Kingdom, and the weary people sighed beneath the weight of ambition. But from this turbulence rose a dynasty that would become the crown jewel of East Asia, the Tang. It was not merely a kingdom of armies and emperors. It was a canvas, a garden, a melody echoing across the Silk Roads. The Tang Dynasty would fashion an era of elegance, tolerance, and golden light. Let us step softly into its radiant corridors. -2. The phoenix rises from the ashes. Out of the ashes of fragmentation, after centuries of disunity and war, the phoenix of China soared once more. When the Sui dynasty collapsed under the weight of its ambition and rebellion, few could imagine the brilliance that would follow. Yet in the year 618 CE, a man named Li Yuan, later known as Emperor Gaozu, seized destiny with sword and statesmanship. He declared the founding of the Tang Dynasty in Chang'an, a city that would become the heartbeat of a civilization and the envy of the known world. His son, the formidable Li Shimin, soon took the reins, becoming Emperor Taizong, a warrior, philosopher, and ruler of rare caliber. Under Taizong, the empire expanded outward with precision. Campaigns into Central Asia, victories over the Eastern Turks, and the consolidation of power across the heartland. But conquest alone was not his legacy. He fostered meritocracy, legal reform, and Confucian revival, shaping a civil administration that would guide China for centuries. He became a mirror in which rulers saw the art of kingship, bold, wise, and just. 3. The splendor of Chang'an. At the heart of this empire lay Chang'an, not merely a city, but a constellation of cultures, philosophies, and ambitions. It stretched wider than the imagination. With over 1 million inhabitants, elegant avenues, bustling markets, and the scent of incense and silk rising from courtyards and temples. Here, Persian traders bartered with Arab scholars, and Buddhist monks from India translated sacred texts into Chinese. Nestorian Christians and Zoroastrians found tolerance within the empire's walls. This was the cosmopolis of the East, the eastern terminus of the Silk Road, a living bridge between worlds. Lanterns flickered beneath the palace eaves. Court officials whispered policy in vermilion halls. And across the city, poets sipped tea as they gazed at the moon and scribbled verses that would outlive dynasties. Chang'an was civilization personified. 4. The brush and the blade. While emperors ruled and armies marched, the soul of the Tang Dynasty pulsed in the ink of its poets. The age of Tang was the golden age of Chinese poetry, a time when the written word became immortal. In the shadowed taverns of Chang'an or on remote riverbanks, poets like Li Bai and Du Fu composed verses that echoed across centuries. Li Bai, the drunken immortal with wild hair and wilder dreams, turned stars and wine into metaphors of cosmic elegance. Du Fu, the poet-historian, chronicled war, famine, and human dignity with haunting beauty. Their poetry wasn't mere literature, it was truth dressed in silk. Words that captured longing, duty, exile, love, and the bittersweet beauty of impermanence. Even emperors wrote poetry. The throne was not immune to the muse. It was said that in Tang China, to not write poetry was to not be fully alive. 5. Beneath the Bodhi tree, religion and philosophy entwined like vines during the Tang era. Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism coexisted and competed, shaping the hearts of emperors and peasants alike. Buddhist monasteries rose like mountains of peace. Monks like Xuanzang, who journeyed all the way to India and back, brought back sacred texts and tales, sparking a surge in Buddhist thought and art. His journey inspired the beloved epic Journey to the West, a spiritual allegory of trials and enlightenment. Taoism, too, flourished, mystical, natural, inward, temples carved into mountains, alchemists seeking immortality, and sages pondering the Tao that moves through all things. Meanwhile, Confucianism remained the scaffolding of society, guiding officials, rituals, and family hierarchies. The civil service examination system based on Confucian texts offered mobility to those with learning and governance to those with virtue. Faith, like poetry, was everywhere in calligraphy, in rituals in the silence beneath the pines. 6. Wu Jiao, Empress of the Dragon Throne. Among the scrolls of Tang history, one name stands uniquely resplendent and controversial: Wu Jiao, better known as Empress Wu Zetian. The only woman to rule China in her own right as emperor, she began as a concubine and rose through wit, cunning, and unmatched political skill. Her reign was one of paradox, ruthless and enlightened. Feared and admired, she ruled not as regent but as sovereign, establishing her own dynasty, briefly the Zhou dynasty, not to be confused with the ancient Zhou. She expanded the civil service, promoted talented officials regardless of birth, and supported the flourishing of Buddhism. She even commissioned a giant stone stele inscribed not with her deeds, but left blank, symbolizing that history would judge her. And judge her it did, with legends casting her as both tyrant and visionary. Yet none can deny she was a force of nature, a dragon robed in silk. Next segments will continue with the military zenith, cultural exports to Korea and Japan, the Lushan Rebellion, and the Tang's poetic twilight. 7. Guardians of the Borderlands. The Tang Dynasty was not only a kingdom of poets and philosophers, it was an empire of soldiers too, with ambitions as vast as the steppe winds. The Tang rulers forged one of the most formidable military forces in Chinese history. Its generals were both scholars and tacticians, men like Li Jing, whose campaigns into Central Asia carved out protectorates as far as modern-day Afghanistan, and Gao Xionzi, a half-Korean general whose armies marched to the edge of the known world. The Battle of Talas in 751 CE, fought against the Abbasid Caliphate, marked the westernmost reach of Tang power. Though the battle was a tactical loss, it carried long shadows. Legend has it that Chinese prisoners introduced papermaking to the Islamic world, a gift that would eventually change history. At its peak, Tang China stretched from the Korean peninsula to the borders of Persia, from the steppes of Mongolia to the jungles of Vietnam. Its borders were guarded by fierce warriors and held by loyalty, coin, and culture. Yet even mighty dragons grow weary. 8. When the center cannot hold. By the mid-8th century, the Tang court glittered with splendor, but under the surface, cracks had begun to form. The government had grown bloated with eunuchs and courtiers. Vast estates in the hands of aristocrats drained the peasantry, while Emperor Xuanzong reveled in art, music, and his love for the enchanting young Gai Fai. Discontent smoldered in the provinces. Then came the storm. In 755 CE, the general Lushan, once a trusted commander, rebelled against the throne with devastating force. His army swept through the heartland like fire. The capital, Chang'an, was taken. The emperor fled. The Lushan rebellion would rage for nearly 8 years and cost the lives of tens of millions. Cities were sacked, fields were burned, and the Tang world bled. Even when the rebellion was crushed, the dynasty would never truly recover. The golden days had dimmed. 9. The Autumn Empire. After the rebellion, the Tang lingered on, brilliant, bruised and fragile. Later emperors tried to revive the strength of old, but the balance of power had shifted. The real authority increasingly fell to eunuchs, warlords, and provincial governors who paid only lip service to the throne. Chang'an was rebuilt, but the spiritual glow had faded. The poetry became more nostalgic, the music more melancholic. Yet even in decline, the Tang dazzled. It exported Buddhism to Korea and Japan, where it mingled with native beliefs. Tang law, architecture and dress-shaped courts from Kyoto to Nara, from Silla to the Khitan steppes. The Tang was no longer just a dynasty, it was a civilizational light. Foreign envoys still bowed before the dragon throne. Monks still crossed the desert to study at Chinese temples. Poets still wrote of fallen blossoms and faded glories. Even in autumn, the Tang remained golden. 10. Farewell to a golden age. By the early 9th century, Tang emperors were shadows of their ancestors. Power slipped from palace hands into the grip of military governors Jidushi, who ruled like kings in all but name. In 874 CE, the Huan Chao rebellion erupted, born of famine, corruption and fury. For a decade, the empire convulsed again. Chang'an was once more captured and left in ruins. In 907 CE, the final Tang emperor abdicated. The dynasty had ended, but its soul endured. Its poetry, painting, philosophy, and politics would echo across centuries. Later dynasties would look back at Tang China as a kind of paradise lost, an ideal of governance, culture, and brilliance that all would seek to recapture. It was a time when words became monuments, when emperors wrote verses, and when the empire was both a sword and a scroll. 11. Legacy in ink and light. The Tang left more than ruins, it left a civilization engraved in memory. The woodblock printing developed in the Tang era allowed for the mass production of text sacred sutras, histories, poetry anthologies. It democratized knowledge. It preserved the voices of sages and dreamers. It planted the seeds of a future literate world. The Tang also championed painting as a refined art. Landscapes of mist and mountains, of wandering hermits and quiet streams, became windows into the philosophical soul of a people who found the divine in nature's silence. Even fashion-flowing robes, high buns, the elegance of Tang courtly dress traveled eastward and endured. In every sense, the Tang was a cultural superpower. Its exports weren't only silk and jade, but thought, beauty, and identity. 12. The moon over Chang'an. Centuries have passed. Dynasties have come and gone. And yet the Tang dynasty remains etched in the Chinese imagination like a moonlit poem over a calm river. It was a time when women rode horses and ruled empires, when monks mapped the cosmos, when cities burned and rebuilt, and when the human spirit, despite its wounds, sang like a zither in the wind. To walk through the pages of Tang history is to wander through a dream of possibility where elegance and tragedy danced in equal measure. 13. Whispers from the Ancients. So now, dear traveler of time, as we leave the golden halls of the Tang behind, listen for its echoes, in the laughter of poets beneath lanterns, in the silent gaze of Buddha statues in forgotten grottos, in the ruins of Chang'an and the stars above Xi'an, in the whisper of paper, in the breath of calligraphy. For the Tang were more than emperors and battles. They were poets. They were architects of eternity. They were the golden dream of an ancient world. And they still live, in the rhythm of 1,000 Chinese hearts, in the ink of the brush, in the glow of memory.